It was the emerald green of the Patagonia R series that obsessed me. Not just the color but the promise it held. I'd spent countless hours scrolling through gear forums, watching reviews, and meticulously tracking its price drops. It was, according to my internal logic, the single most essential item I needed to survive the final brutal leg of high school and the subsequent jump into a cold, indifferent college world. The Patagonia R series was a shield, a status symbol, and, most importantly, proof that my parents understood my deep, specific needs. My Christmas list, typed in a crisp 12-point font and titled, Essential Survival Gear 2024, had one item underlined 3 times, bolded, and annotated with 3 links to the lowest price I'd found. Everything else was filler. Socks, books, the usual sacrificial items meant to make the list look less rapacious. I was 18, pragmatic, and currently running on the volatile fuel of senior year ambition. The problem wasn't the desire. The problem was the budget. My mother, God bless her frugal soul, had instituted the Matching Savings Initiative this year. For every dollar I saved toward my big item, they would match it, up to $200. It was a commendable plan, designed to teach me the value of work and delayed gratification. Unfortunately, I'd maxed out the matching fund in September. The jacket cost nearly $400 more. You know, Clara, my dad said one Sunday afternoon, looking up from the ledger of Christmas funds, a silly notebook my mother kept. You have 2 weeks left. Do you know how many houses need holiday lights hung up? You could make that $400 in 2 good weekends. I sighed dramatically, letting the full weight of my teenage angst settle onto my shoulders. Dad, I have 3 AP assignments, college application edits, and Mrs. Davison's history final. I don't have time to battle a rickety ladder and frozen shingles. Time, my mother chimed in from the kitchen, stirring something savory, is what you make. And, frankly, Clara, I think you need a perspective adjustment before Christmas. Your list is entirely self-centered. Self-centered. It was true, but hearing it articulated felt like a personal affront. I retreated to my bedroom, a sterile sanctuary filled with meticulously organized textbooks, but the word self-centered followed me like a faint, unpleasant echo. It was 2 days later, snowing fat, wet flakes, when the perspective adjustment arrived, bundled in a threadbare, moth-eaten coat. I was shoveling our driveway, an unpaid chore but one that kept me warm and gave me time to mentally draft my college essay. As I leaned on the shovel, catching my breath, my gaze drifted across the street. There sat the house of Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson was the neighborhood relic. He was old, maybe 85, and he'd been a widower for years. His small, single-story home was a testament to slow decay. The house was once a cheerful cream color. Now it was patchy beige and mildew green. The gutters hung like broken teeth, and the small wooden fence around his postage stamp garden was leaning at a precarious 45-degree angle, defeated by time and neglect. Today Mr. Henderson was out there, struggling. He wasn't shoveling. He was trying to hang a single short strand of multicolored lights over his front window. He was standing precariously on an overturned paint can, his hands shaking slightly against the cold and the effort. He was trying to tape the lights up with clear packing tape, a futile gesture against the forces of gravity and freezing temperatures. I watched for a moment, genuinely concerned. He wobbled. I saw the movement in the reflection of my bedroom window, and I dropped my shovel. "Are you okay, Mr. Henderson?" I called out, crossing the street. He flinched, startled, nearly losing his balance. His face, etched with wrinkles that seemed to hold every year of his life, was a mask of stubborn pride. "Perfectly fine, Clara," he grunted, his voice dry and crackly. "Just securing the festive ornamentation." The tape immediately peeled off, taking a strip of paint with it, and the short string of lights fell to the ground with a soft, defeated thud. He stared at the lights, then at his hands, a deep frustration settling in his shoulders. It wasn't just the lights. It was everything the failed task represented. I took a deep breath. This was it. The perspective adjustment opportunity. The chance to prove my mother wrong. "Mr. Henderson," I said, trying to sound as professional and non-patronizing as possible. That tape won't hold in this cold. You need proper clips. Let me run home, grab my ladder and some supplies. I'll have those up for you in 10 minutes. He looked up at me, his eyes a pale, watery blue. Oh no, no need for that, dear. I wouldn't want to impose. It's too much trouble. It's not trouble, I insisted, already turning back toward my house. It's physics. You can't fight physics with packing tape. I'll be right back. 10 minutes later, I had the lights strung up perfectly. He paid me $20. A $20 bill so crisp it looked like it had been ironed. It was a good start. But once I was on the ladder, I couldn't unsee the rest of the decay. The broken fence, the sheer amount of moss growing on the north side of the roof, the windows that hadn't been washed in years. The house looked tired, and so did he. I didn't immediately go back for the rest of the work. I had the $20, and my list was still calling. I bought the new edition of my AP history textbook and mentally credited the remainder to my jacket fund. The next day, however, as I walked past his house, Mr. Henderson was sitting on his porch, bundled up, holding a mug of coffee. He waved a small, almost shy wave. "Morning, Clara," he said. "Good morning, Mr. Henderson. It looks nice with the lights on." He smiled faintly. "It does. Makes a difference, doesn't it? I'm used to not bothering. My Martha always used to do it. After she passed, well, I just didn't see the point." His voice held a note of profound, aching loneliness. It was a simple phrase, but it dropped into my chest like a lead weight, momentarily eclipsing the memory of the emerald green jacket. My internal ledger shifted. This wasn't just about earning money now. "Mr. Henderson," I began hesitantly, "I have a little bit of free time this week before my finals. Would you let me fix that fence for you? It's going to collapse soon." He looked at the fence, then back at me. "Fix the fence? That's a big job, dear. Nails, wood, paint. I'm good with tools. My dad taught me. And I'm strong," I fibbed slightly, knowing my strength lay mostly in typing speed, but determined nonetheless. "You just let me know if you have any old paint or wood out back." He agreed reluctantly, and the following Saturday I started. The fence was worse than it looked. The wood was rotten, the concrete anchors cracked. I spent the morning pulling up the ruined slats. It was physically exhausting. My hands were raw and blistered by lunchtime, and the snow, which had stopped, left the ground muddy and slick. I had to buy 2 new 2x4s from the hardware store, which promptly depleted the remaining $20 I'd made, plus 30 more from my already meager savings. When I was done, one small section of the fence stood straight and proud, painted a fresh, slightly darker cream. It looked ridiculous next to the rest of the dilapidated structure, like a single new tooth in an old, crooked smile. But Mr. Henderson stood beside me, watching. "It's the strongest part of the street now, Clara," he observed, his eyes moist. "Absolutely the strongest part." I felt a quiet, deep satisfaction I hadn't expected. It wasn't the rush of a successful shopping trip or a high test score. It was the tangible evidence of effort turned into kindness. But I knew I couldn't fix the whole house myself. It was too big, too expensive, too much time I didn't have. I started to let the thought fade again, focusing back on my upcoming exams. The jacket whispered in my ear, "Stop wasting your time on small, meaningless acts." Then I remembered Lily. Lily, my cousin, was the antithesis of my pragmatism. She was an art student, all bright colors, paint-stained jeans, and boundless, messy energy. She also had a knack for finding discarded treasures and making them beautiful. I called her on Monday night. "Clara, what is it?" I'm midway through a charcoal study of a bowl of fruit that keeps staring back at me menacingly. "Lily, I have a project. Huge one. It's the ultimate DIY, community service, artistic expression opportunity of the decade. And I need your help." I explained, Mr. Henderson. I glossed over my initial reluctance and emphasized the sheer tragedy of the house. I focused on the aesthetic potential. His living room, Lily. It's like a time capsule from 1975, but a sad time capsule. The wallpaper is peeling, the curtains are sun-bleached. And he has this beautiful old armchair that's just dying. We could save it. We could give him back his home for Christmas." Lily was silent for a moment. Then, with the dramatic flair I expected, she breathed, "Clara, this is spectacular. A resurrection. A physical manifestation of human kindness against the brutalist architecture of time. I'll bring my sander." With Lily on board, the project expanded, taking on a life of its own. We started with the living room, the one place Mr. Henderson spent most of his time. He was initially resistant, insisting he was perfectly fine living with the distressed patina of age. But Lily's enthusiasm was a tidal wave. She convinced him to let us paint the walls a soft, warm ivory. The first weekend was a disaster. We found mold behind a bookcase. We uncovered a massive crack in the plaster. We realized the carpet, which we'd planned to steam clean, was irrevocably stained. I was ready to give up after 3 hours of scraping wallpaper, but Lily put on a playlist of 80s synthpop and started dancing with the dust cloths. "Look at this as excavation, Clara. We're not cleaning. We're archaeologists of a forgotten life," she declared, her hair flying out of its bun. Over the next week, I used every lunch break to drive to the house and work for an hour. I dipped deeper into my savings. The camera lens fund was officially gone. I bought plaster, primer, paint, and new curtain rods. Lily spent an entire day fixing the old armchair, reupholstering the seat cushion with a fabric she'd found on sale, turning it from a sad, sunken heap into a cozy, dignified reading chair. I kept the work a secret from my parents, knowing they'd appreciate the service but be furious about the secrecy and the depletion of my college application fee fund, which in my mind was still the jacket fund. Mr. Henderson started to change, too. When we first started, he would retreat to his tiny kitchen and read the newspaper, only emerging to offer us a glass of lukewarm water with a skeptical look. Now he was involved. He started sharing stories. "That crack in the wall," he said one afternoon, pointing to the plaster I was patching. "That was from the day Martha threw her slipper at me. I told her I was going hunting with the boys instead of taking her to the city fair. She had a surprising arm for a woman who baked all day." He paused, a tiny, genuine laugh escaping his lips. Lily and I stopped sanding, mesmerized. He pointed to a faint, sun-bleached spot on the wall where a picture frame had hung for decades. "That was a photograph of me and Martha, 1965, at the pier. She was wearing this ridiculous hat, all wide brim and flowers. I never saw her look happier. It wasn't the walls we were fixing. It was the memories we were reviving. We weren't just covering the decay. We were clearing the dust off a life he still cherished but had felt too heavy to maintain alone." One Tuesday, I had a catastrophic moment. I was driving home from the hardware store, clutching a bucket of white paint, when I saw a pop-up ad on my phone. Patagonia R Series 50% off. One-day flash sale. My heart slammed against my ribs. 50% was a miracle. I could buy it right now, even with my depleted funds. I pulled over, my fingers hovering over the Buy Now button. I looked at the paint bucket. I thought of the half-finished, beautiful room in Mr. Henderson's house. I remembered the look on his face when he told the story about Martha's slipper. I thought of the old, cracked plaster waiting for its final coat. The urge was overwhelming, the need for the emerald green jacket. I deserved it. I worked hard. This was a reward. I stared at the screen for a full minute, the paint bucket weighing heavily on the passenger seat. Then, slowly, deliberately, I closed the tab. I put the phone down, took a deep breath, and drove the rest of the way to Mr. Henderson's house. The next day, I used the money I would have spent on the jacket to buy him a new, simple area rug to replace the stained carpet. It was a dark blue, a color that made the old armchair pop and gave the room a sense of warmth and dignity. It was the single largest expense I had ever made on someone else. The sacrifice didn't feel like a loss. Felt like a decision. Felt like growing up. I realized I was no longer obsessed with the jacket. The emptiness that the jacket was supposed to fill was being occupied by something real, something solid. We had planned the grand unveiling for Christmas Eve. We told Mr. Henderson that we needed him out of the house for a final, detailed cleaning session. My mother, finally brought into the secret, drove him to a small, early Christmas luncheon at the community center, agreeing to bring him back exactly at 6 p.m. The final hours were pure chaos. Lily, my dad, who was surprisingly good with a drill, and I worked furiously. We hung the new curtains, polished the small wooden side table he had, and carefully positioned the new rug. I hung a few simple ornaments on a tiny borrowed pine tree in the corner. Lily brought a stack of her watercolor landscape prints, simple, peaceful scenes, and hung them up. The final touch was the photograph. I had found the old, faded photo of Mr. Henderson and Martha on the pier tucked into a dusty Bible. I had taken it to a local print shop and had it digitally restored, framed in a simple silver frame. I placed it prominently on the mantelpiece, right where the sun-bleached spot had been. At 5:58 p.m. we were done. We stood in the newly restored, softly lit living room. It wasn't perfect, but it was magnificent. It smelled of fresh paint and pine needles, not dust and age. It was a home again. The car pulled up at 6:01. My mother walked Mr. Henderson slowly up the freshly shoveled path. Lily and I waited by the door. "Now, close your eyes, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice shaking with anticipation. He chuckled, a raspy sound but compliant. Goodness, all this secrecy for a little bit of paint. Lily and I guided him to the center of the living room, in front of the new armchair and the small, glowing tree. "Okay," Lily whispered. "Open." He opened his eyes. He didn't speak. He just stood there, his coat still buttoned, his scarf falling slightly crookedly around his neck. He looked at the white walls, the blue rug, the gentle light filtering through the new curtains, and the organized space. His eyes traveled slowly, taking in every detail. They stopped on the mantelpiece. Martha, smiling widely beneath her ridiculous hat. A sound, almost like a suppressed sob, escaped him. He reached out a trembling hand and gently touched the glass of the frame. "Martha," he whispered, the name catching in his throat. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were completely full of tears, but his face held the brightest, most uninhibited smile I had ever seen. The mask of stubborn pride and quiet loneliness was shattered. "It's beautiful, Clara," he managed, the words thick with emotion. "It's like coming home." Then Lily stepped forward. This was her final gift. "Mr. Henderson," she said softly, holding a small acoustic guitar she'd brought. "You told us about the city fair you almost missed, and the pier where you took that picture. I wrote a song about what you told us. I hope you like it." She sat down and began to play. Her voice, usually powerful and slightly raspy, was soft and clear as it filled the small, warm room. The song was simple, folksy, and beautiful. It wove together the story of the lost slipper, the ridiculous hat, the feel of the salt air on the pier, and the quiet comfort of a life shared. It wasn't just a song. It was a testament to his love, his loss, and the enduring beauty of his memories. As Lily sang the final, delicate chord, Mr. Henderson was openly weeping, but his eyes were shining. He wasn't crying from sorrow. He was crying from being seen. When the song ended, there was a profound silence. He walked over to the new armchair and sank into it, pulling the new blue blanket over his lap. He looked utterly at peace. "That," he said simply, wiping his face with a wrinkled handkerchief, "is the greatest gift I have ever received. The finest I can imagine." My mother, standing in the doorway with my dad, smiled at me, a deep, knowing look that needed no words. Later that night, back in my own cozy, familiar house, I was staring at my phone. The Patagonia R Series flash sale was over. The price was back to the astronomical amount. I deleted the shopping tab. I looked at my neatly organized desk, but I felt something profound had shifted in the geometry of my life. The physical exhaustion from the fence and the painting was still there, but beneath it was a sensation of lightness. I realized the jacket, that expensive, desired shield, would have served only one person, me. It would have offered transient satisfaction and protection from the cold. What I had done for Mr. Henderson, what we had done together, was more than just a renovation. It was an act of restoration, not just of a room, but of a man's connection to his own cherished past. It was a gift that had no price tag, no brand name, and no expiry date. I finally understood what my mother meant about perspective. My Christmas list had been a catalogue of wants. The true gift was the feeling of abundance that came from giving. My heart, full and quiet and warm, was a better shield than any emerald green jacket could ever be. I had spent my money and my time, and in return I had received the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that I was capable of making someone else's world beautiful. And that, I decided, was the true spirit of Christmas, now and every year to come.